All right, today we're going to go ahead and make a foldable to help us review graphing on the coordinate plane. At the counter, you got this paper there. It's got this line that's down the middle, or not the middle, but towards the bottom. Go ahead and cut that strip off below. I did it there. What you get now is a perfect square. What I want you to do with this square is to go ahead and fold it in half, both left and right, horizontally and up and down, vertically. Now, you have two fold lines that run down the middle, both up, down, left, right. Go ahead and fill those in, because those are going to be our x and y axis for our coordinate plane. So I'll go ahead and fill it that way. Now let's go ahead and draw this line here. And because these are number lines, they go on forever in all the directions. So I'm going to draw arrow tips. Okay, so now here I have the x and y axis. I need to decide which is which, so as we all know that the x-axis always runs left and right, so I'll go ahead and label this x-axis and show that it's the one that goes sideways or left and right, how you want to think about it. And the other axis, that up and down one, is the y-axis, and that goes left and right and up and down from our perspective right there. Now the point where they meet here in the middle is called the origin. It is where the 0 of the x-axis and the 0 on the y-axis intersect. So we'll go ahead and label that as well. Origin. Now let's go ahead and finish or keep going with this construction, and let's put some numbers on our number lines. On our x-axis that goes left and right, if this is 0, then every number that comes to the right is going to be positive. So I'll go ahead and make those marks. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in the marks for all other number lines. And then I'll quickly rotate my paper around, try to keep my marks as consistent as possible, and get this done as soon as I can. Great, so now I have all these marked. I can go ahead and start numbering my number line. If this is 0, then this would be positive 1. This is positive 2, positive 3, 4, and I'll go ahead and just label all my positives to the right of my number line. And then to my left, I have negatives, because remember, if everything to the right of 0 is positive, then everything to the left is negative. That would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, 7, 9, 11, and it continues negative infinitely to the left. Now, I have my y-axis. My y-axis goes up and down. If this is 0, just like a thermometer, everything up is positive. So this would be positive 1, this would be positive 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on, forever going up. And if positive is going up, then negative is going down. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10, and it goes down negative for quite a while. Finally, now let's go ahead and practice graphing some points. Before we start graphing, we have two rules to remember. Whenever we're going to graph points or read points, we always begin at the origin. So our first rule is to always start at origin. And I'll put a little bubble around that to kind of let us know that it's important. And then when we want to graph points, we have two steps to follow. Our first step is to move sideways first. Negative left, positive right. And then finally we move up or down. Positive up, negative down, next. So those are our two main rules for graphing points and plotting points. It's always sideways and then up and down. So let's go ahead and practice graphing some points. The first point I want to go ahead and graph is going to be at positive 4, positive 6. Beginning at the origin, I go 4 to the right because it's positive 4, and up 6 because it's positive 6. Plot a point and label it positive 4, positive 6. The next point I want to graph is going to be at 0, positive 4, right here. This is going to be directly on the y-axis because since my first coordinate was a 0, I didn't move left or right, I just went up 4 steps. Also, you can have points on the x-axis. For example, let's look at the point -8, comma 0. That means I moved -8 steps to the left, but I didn't move up or down. This point's on the x-axis. Let's try another point. Let's try a point at -7, -6, which would be about right here. Plot a point, label it. That means -7 means I went 7 to the left and 6 steps down. Finally, let's do another point over here, and we'll say at 2, -2. That's positive 2 steps to the right, and then -2 steps down. Whenever you plot points, it's always a sideways movement first, and then up or down. Now, let's go ahead and further break down these points. I've noticed that all these points lay in various areas. For example, +4, +6. This area over here created by the intersection of the x and y axis is called the first quadrant. So what I'm going to do is take the corner and fold it down to just where it almost touches the origin. This is called quadrant 1. It's sometimes referred to with the Roman numeral 1 or just the number 1. Everything, any point that exists in this quadrant always has 2 positive numbers. A positive x because it's to the right of 0 on the number line, and a positive y because it's above 0, also on the y-axis. Now, when we read quadrants, we go counterclockwise, so that takes us over here to the left. This quadrant over here is quadrant 2. So we'll label it Q2. Sometimes it's labeled with the Roman numeral or just the number 2. Anything, any point that exists in this quadrant is first of all to the left of 0, which means that its x value has to be negative, but it's also above 0 on the y-axis, which means its second y-coordinate has to be positive. Now, moving counterclockwise continued, we have this quadrant down here. This is quadrant 3. We will label it Q3. Sometimes it'll be labeled Roman numeral 3 or just number 3. Down here, we look at any point that exists in this area, and using this point as an example, we see that any point in quadrant 3 has to have 2 negative numbers. Looks like it's sleeping. And finally, we have our final quadrant moving counterclockwise, and this is quadrant 4. Any point to exist over here is to the right of 0, which means it has to have a positive x, but it's below 0 on the y-axis, which means it has to have a negative y. This is quadrant 4. We'll call it Q4. Roman numeral 4 sometimes is what it's called, or just number 4. So now you have a little foldable, and because I didn't fold all the way to the middle, you can see my x and y axis shows through. Now all you have to do is turn it over to the back, and let's go ahead and just make this your own. Let's go ahead and label it.